Hey guys, this is God of Politics. Welcome back to a brand new video, but before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, join the Discord that is linked down in the description, and check out the website, which is also linked down in the description. But in today's video, I will be doing my final Senate prediction. Now, currently, the Senate is made up of 53 Republicans, 45 Democrats, and 2 independents that caucus with the Democrats. But Democrats are looking like they have a good opportunity of gaining the Senate, or at least gaining a number of seats in the Senate. So I will be going through each one of these seats that is up for re-election. There are 12 Democrat seats up for re-election. There are 23 Republican seats up for re-election. And I'm going to be predicting how each one of these races will go and by what margin they will go by. So just to remind you, for those who do not know, the margins that I use for these races are 0 to 2% for tilt, 2 to 5% for lean, 5 to 10% for likely, and 10+% for safe. So let's get right into it. So first, to start off with the safe Republican states that will go by a margin greater than 10% to the Republican candidate. That includes states like Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia. So after the safe states for the Republicans, they have 42 seats, and then the safe states for the Democrats include Oregon, New Mexico, as well as Illinois, New Jersey, Delaware, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and the state of New Hampshire. So after the safe Democratic states, they do have 43 seats, plus the state of Virginia, that is 44 seats. Republicans, after their safe states, have 42 seats. So Democrats are already in a pretty good position. There's a number of states that could be theoretically closer at the presidential level, states like New Mexico, states like Virginia, states like New Hampshire. These states will be closer at the presidential level, most likely, but they are safe for the Senate level. So getting into the likely states, the first likely state for the Republicans is the state of Alaska. Now in Alaska, you have Dan Sullivan, who's not that great of a candidate. He's not that popular, and he is running against Al Gross, who's actually quite a good candidate. He's done well in some polls. He's got good fundraising numbers, but Alaska is just too red of a state for a Democrat. Al Gross is actually an independent, but he would caucus with the Democrats. It's too red of a state for someone like Al Gross to be able to win and be competitive, but it will be a little bit closer than the presidential race, so that is something of note. Next is the state of Texas. I do believe Texas will go by a likely margin. Now, John Cornyn is going to be able to win quite easily. If we look at the polls for the state of Texas, let me go to the Senate race here. We can see that Cornyn is up in most polls by a pretty substantial margin. In some polls, he's even up by almost a safe margin. But the thing you have to note about these polls, there's a lot of undecided voters, and part of that is due to the name recognition of MJ Hagar, which is not that high in the state of Texas. But I do believe that John Cornyn will win quite easily. It will probably go by around 8 percentage points. That's a rough estimate, but John Cornyn will be able to win quite easily. The state of Kansas is also a state that I predict will go by a likely margin. If we do want to look at the polls here, it has actually shown it a little closer. We look at, there was one of Marshall's internal polls. So Coefficient is a Republican internal pollster. They only had Marshall up 12 percentage points. This, had a large sample size, and it's a Republican internal, which usually overestimates the Republicans. They only had Marshall up 12. Siena College had Marshall up 4. GBAO had Bollier up 1. V Creek/AMG had Marshall plus 4. So I'm not going to say that, the race is going to be close or it has the possibility of flipping. It doesn't really. But I do believe it will go by a likely margin, probably by around 9 percentage points to Roger Marshall. He's just not that great of a candidate, and Kansas will be close to the presidential level due to those suburban shifts in areas like Johnson County in the northeastern part of the state. And then the final state that will go by a likely margin, I believe, is the state of South Carolina. Now, South Carolina is a state that has been closely watched for much of this cycle, and you have Lindsey Graham, who's an unpopular Republican incumbent, less so in the state, more so out of the state, especially amongst Democrats. He has been known to, people say that he's changed his opinions on a lot of things. He used to be friends with Joe Biden. He now isn't anymore. Things with the Brett Kavanaugh made him more unpopular. It's kind of similar to Ted Cruz in a way, but I believe that Jamie Harrison, the Democratic challenger, has less of a chance than what Beto O'Rourke had. I don't think he's going to do very much. If you want to look at the fundraising, it is just ridiculous the amount of money that Jamie Harrison has raised. If you go to the state of South Carolina, we can see this race has raised a total of $180 million, and Jamie Harrison has raised $108 million almost. That is just a ridiculous amount of money. Lindsey Graham's raised a lot of money too. He's raised $73 million, which is, I believe, more than any other Republican candidate ever, but Jamie Harrison has beat him to it. But it's not going to be enough. South Carolina is still a red state. It's a pretty inelastic state, and I do believe that Jamie Harrison will be able to win that race. Then the likely margin states for the Democrats include first the state of Minnesota. Some polls have shown this closer, but Tina Smith will be able to pull it off by around 5 to 6 percentage points. Minnesota is not going to be a close state at the presidential level. Joe Biden will win it by around 4 percentage points, something like that. Tina Smith's going to gain in the suburbs, and she'll do worse than 2018 for sure, but she'll be able to do quite well. Jason Lewis isn't that great of a candidate. He's running in the wrong year. The next state I do believe will go by likely margin is the state of Colorado. In the state of Colorado, you have Cory Gardner going up against John Hickenlooper. Now, the state of Colorado is similar to Alabama in many ways. You have a Republican or Democrat. You have an incumbent of a party the opposite of the way that the state will go and has gone in the past, and they have made some votes that would go against what, most of the people in this state would want. And I'm not saying that Cory Gardner is going to lose by as much as Doug Jones is, but he's still going to lose quite easily. I think he'll lose by around 8 to 9 percentage points. He's basically dead on arrival after he voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act. That was many years ago, but he's repealed it multiple times. He has come out in support of Trump a lot of the time. He votes with Trump most of the time, and then he voted for Amy Coney Barrett. And this is a state that Joe Biden will win very easily too. So I don't believe that Colorado is going to be competitive at all at the Senate level. John Hickenlooper's done well in fundraising, well in the polls, and while he's had some scandals, things like that, it's not really going to matter. So the next state I do believe will go by a likely margin. Actually, there are no more states going by likely margin. So after the likely margin states, Democrats are at 46 seats. Republicans are also at 46 seats here. Next, to go to the lean margin states, I do believe that the state of Montana will go by a lean margin. Now, Montana is an interesting state because the longer this race has gone on, the more confident I have been that Steve Daines will win this race. Now, Steve Bullock, in the debate, he had a questionable answer on court packing, basically not what I think, but based on what people in Montana would think. And the polls are not that great for Steve Bullock. If we do want to look at the polls from the state of Montana, we can see here that, Steve Bullock's been up in a couple of polls that are Democrat leaning or Democrat internal polls. Daines has been leading in polls like the New York Times. I think Daines will win by around 4 percentage points. I don't think that Bullock has too much of a chance. Maybe it could be closer. Maybe it goes by around 2 to 3 percentage points, but I just don't see a path to victory for Steve Bullock. He is the governor. He's got a lot of things going for him, but the fact that it's such a red state is not going to help him. And the lean Democrat states. First, I do believe the state of Arizona will be lean Democrat. This will be on the cusp of likely. I think Mark Kelly is going to be able to win by almost 5 percentage points. I just think that, it might be a little bit closer because Arizona is still a state that's close to the presidential level, and Martha McSally is not a great candidate. We look at some of these polls here. We see such a huge result and a huge lead for Kelly in so many of these polls, and some polls have shown it a little closer. I think that's around where it's going to be. We also look at the fundraising data. Mark Kelly has done exceptionally well for the Senate race. This is almost as much raised as the South Carolina Senate race. Mark Kelly has, almost doubled, or, 10 million short of doubling Martha McSally's number, 15 million short of doubling McSally's number here, and he has a lot more money in the bank compared to McSally, 2 million more, and he's done very well in the polls. And this is a state, Martha McSally's unpopular. She wasn't even elected to the seat. She's going to lose. I'm pretty confident of that. Michigan's another state I do believe will be lean Democrat, and this is another state I do believe will be on the cusp of being between lean and likely Democrat. I do believe Gary Peters will win by around 4 to 5. Even John James's internals have him down 2 percentage points, and it's very hard for you to win after that. And sure, we had polls with Peters up like 13 percentage points, but those aren't going to be realistic. I could see Peters winning by a likely margin. I could easily see that, but I also think that I could see it being a little closer. John James is a decent candidate. He's just run in the 2 wrong elections. He ran in 2018, which is the blue wave year, and now he's running in 2020, which is not going to be a good year for the Republican Party. So I do believe Gary Peters will be able to win, probably by around a lean margin, maybe in the likely margin as well. The next state that I do believe will go by a lean margin is the state of Maine. Now, Looking at the data from the state of Maine, there is virtually nothing going Susan Collins' way. There has not been a single poll in a very, very long time to show that Susan Collins has been winning. Going down the list here, you'd have to go all the way back to July, which is more information, which is her Republican internal poll, which now shows it even. So, she's in a very bad position if we also want to look at the fundraising. Maine's very cheap to buy advertisements. It's a low population state, and you can see the Senate fundraising here. It's got $95 million. Susan Collins has done very poorly in the fundraising. $26 million versus Sarah Gideon's $68. She has more than doubled Susan Collins' number. She has a lot more cash on hand as well. You also look at the nature of this state. This is a blue state, and I do believe that Susan Collins will lose and Sarah Gideon will win by around 3 percentage points. I think that's realistic. And then getting into the tilt margin states, first, I believe Iowa is a tilt Republican state. I did have this as tilt Democrat for a while, but after seeing some of the new polls, it's not looking too good for Teresa Greenfield there. If we do want to look at the polls from the state of Iowa, we had the most recent poll, which was from Seltzer, which is the quality poll from Iowa. They showed Ernst up forward, but you look at some of these numbers from Iowa's 1st congressional district, they had the Republican candidate winning by 15, and their candidate's going to lose by around 5, so that's a 20-point difference in one of the 4 congressional districts. That makes a difference, and I do believe that Greenfield will do better than this. 46-42 is also not a realistic number because there's undecideds, things like that. So I do believe that this race will be closer than what Seltzer shows. I don't believe Greenfield will win. I think she will narrowly lose, but she has done very well in the fundraising. She's done well in a lot of polls, and I do believe that, Iowa's a very swingy state, and Joni Ernst is not a good candidate. So I do believe that this race will be very close, but I do expect Joni Ernst to narrowly win. However, Cal Cunningham, I do expect to very, very narrowly win. He had the scandal going on. Before that, he looked very likely to win. Now, it's not looking so likely, but I think he is still very, very narrowly favored. Rasmussen has him up, ECU has him up, Marist has him up, CNN has him up. The only poll that doesn't have him up is, I think this is a Republican internal poll or something like that, but again, the numbers are kind of weird here. 8% for third parties, that doesn't make much sense. New York Times had him up, UMass Lowell had him up, Survey USA had him up. Most polls still have him up, and sure, North Carolina polls, notoriously underestimate Republicans, but, he has such a strong lead that I think it's going to be hard to overcome, and Tom Tillis is not a popular candidate. Even after the scandal, Tom Tillis is still not as favored and as well liked as Cal Cunningham is. When we look at the fundraising, and it's very good for Cal Cunningham, so I do believe that he will be able to narrowly pull it off, but it will be very close. Now, as you can see here, I have added the runoff column here because I do believe that both Georgia seats will go to a runoff. Now, this may be kind of hard to understand because in the state of Georgia, if no candidate receives 50% of the vote, a runoff occurs. This is all but certain in the special election. In the special election, I believe Warnock will come first. I think he'll get, maybe around 40% of the vote, maybe a little bit less than that. It's kind of hard to tell, but I think he'll get around 40%. These are just rough estimates. And then I believe Kelly Loeffler will come second. It is going to be close with Doug Collins because, Doug Collins, his district has had, a lot of boost and a lot of turnout in the early voting data, so it shows, enthusiasm for him. But I do believe that Loeffler will narrowly win. She has a big fundraising advantage, and I do believe she can do better in the suburbs. So I do believe that Loeffler will be able to win, but it will be quite close. But going into the runoff, we'll have to see. I wouldn't make a official prediction yet, but I would say Loeffler is definitely favored against Warnock due to the fact that turnout is usually low for these special elections. And then for the regular election, John Ossoff has gained a lot of momentum recently, especially after that debate moment. He's got record fundraising numbers from the state of Georgia. And if we do want to look at the Senate race here, we can see, he has been up in a lot of polls. But the thing is, I don't think he's going to get 50%, which he needs. You saw this poll here from Monmouth, which had him at +3. There is 2% for the third party. So we look at this total vote, there's 3% undecided. It's going to be very hard for Ossoff to crack 50% here. Can he do it? I think there's a chance he does it, but I don't think he will. There's also a chance that Purdue wins outright as well. But I believe it will go to a runoff. I believe that Perdue will narrowly defeat Ossoff in terms of the raw vote. I think he'll get maybe just under 50% to Ossoff, who gets, just over 48, maybe 48.5%. It's hard to tell what the third party will get, maybe around 1.6 percentage points, something like that. And Perdue wins, 49.9 to 48.5. So we could see some situation like that. I think that's very, very possible. But, John Ossoff definitely has momentum, and Georgia's a changing state. But if I had to put these either way, I'd both put them in the Republican column, which makes the Senate overall 50-50. But again, both of these states are going to the runoff. So after the elections, the November 3rd elections, Democrats are going to have 50 seats, Republicans are going to have 48, which will likely turn into 50 at the beginning of January when they have the runoff. But anyway, this is my final Senate elections prediction. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, join the Discord that is linked down in the description, and check out the website that is also linked down in the description. My final presidential elections prediction will be uploaded tomorrow, so stay tuned for that as well. Anyway, thank you all for watching, guys, and I will see you guys later.